Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really fascinating scientific quest. We're going to use the tools of logic and linguistics to try and decode one of the most fundamental things about us, our language. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it, the central mystery. We know there are thousands of languages out there, right? But what if there's a universal code, some hidden set of rules for meaning that's actually hardwired into all of them? So our quest really begins with that one big question. Is there a universal language code? We're basically on the hunt for the deep structures that might connect every single form of human speech. Just look at this. On the surface, the words look totally different, right? Agua, Wasser, Shui. But the concept they point to, water, that's a universal human experience. And that's the core of this whole search, finding the shared logic that's hiding underneath all the different sounds and symbols. So, how do scientists actually go about looking for this hidden code? Well, they don't just sit around and guess. They have this incredibly powerful toolkit called formal semantics. It's all about applying the same kind of rigor you'd find in mathematics to the often messy and complicated world of human language. All right, let's start digging for some of those semantic clues. We're going to look at some of the most compelling pieces of evidence. The first major discoveries in this whole quest for universal meaning. Okay, so clue number one is this foundational idea called compositionality. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is as the language Legos rule. The basic idea is that every single language builds complex meanings from simple pieces in a really predictable, systematic way. And the process itself is just brilliantly simple. You take one word brick, let's say cats, and another one for sleep. You just apply a little grammatical rule and just like snapping two Legos together, you create a brand new meaning that anyone who knows the pieces and the rules can totally understand. And this seems to be a universal feature of how we all talk. Our next big clue involves words you use constantly without even realizing it. Quantifiers. It turns out that words for ideas like all, some, and most don't just pop up in every language. They also seem to follow the exact same underlying logic, no matter where you are in the world. Now, what's so fascinating about this is that it reveals this kind of universal mental shortcut called conservativity. So when you hear a sentence like, most dogs in the park are happy, your brain automatically, instantly knows to only focus on the dogs in the park. You don't even think about the trees or the birds. This stay-on-topic rule is a super strong candidate for a universal law of meaning. And finally, here's another really powerful clue. The basic ability to affirm something with a yes and to deny it with a no, that seems to be a primary building block of communication absolutely everywhere. These aren't just words, they're foundational logical moves that shape our conversations across every culture. So, with clues this strong, the case for a universal code seems, well, almost closed, right? It feels like we're right on the edge of a huge breakthrough. But, as always with language, it's just a little more complicated than that. Yeah, not quite. Because as soon as we start to dig a little deeper, we find some pretty serious cracks in this perfect universal code. Just take a seemingly simple word like many. What does many actually mean? Well, 5 people is definitely many for a car, right? But 5,000 people? That might not be many at all if you're talking about a giant stadium. The meaning completely changes depending on the context. And that's something that pure universal logic really struggles with. And this highlights a huge challenge that philosophers have been pointing out for centuries. A giant part of language isn't built on some universal logic. It's just based on shared cultural agreements or conventions. We all just agree that a certain sound means tree, but that agreement is local. It's not universal. So the crucial point here is that when you really look closely, that perfect code starts to fall apart. You've got the problem of context and vagueness, like we saw with the word many. You have massive differences from one language to the next. Heck, even 2 people speaking the same language can have slightly different meanings for words. Real, everyday language is just way messier than a simple, clean code. So where does all this leave our investigation? If the code is somehow both universal and broken, what's the final verdict on how human language actually works? Well, instead of a simple yes or no answer, the evidence points to this really beautiful and dynamic tension. It's like, on one hand, we seem to share a cognitive blueprint for how logic and meaning should work, but on the other hand, our cultures and our languages express those ideas with this incredible, flexible diversity. So, the big takeaway isn't that all languages are secretly the same. It's actually something much more profound. It's like we're all building from a common toolkit, shared logical principles, cognitive shortcuts, all that stuff. But each culture uses those same tools to build its own unique masterpiece. And that leaves us with one last kinda provocative thought. Maybe this whole quest to find the universal laws of language isn't just about words. Maybe by trying to decode the structure of how we all create meaning, what we're actually doing is mapping the universal structure of the human mind itself.